And we are here because we are visible, vocal, valuable, and victorious voices of recovery, as well as those that have been affected by addiction, right?
That's right.
Because you're out of sight and you've seen the light and you know what's right. So that is what we're going to be doing today. Yes, it's yes. And today, we're having our Western Massachusetts Public Policy Forum. And there was a little pause and said, do we really, want to do this year? Maybe we should do centralized ones. And then Nico, our Western Mass Regional coordinator said, we must. We are. We are. And so therefore, I want to thank all of our staff for being here today. And the staff will stand up. And we have Hannah, we have Denise, and we have Nico, and we have Kristen, and we have Scotty, and we have Noel, and who did I miss?
Trevor.
Very good, very excellent. Great. And what more does, in case you know, that we are people and families and individuals and with all those that want to support the process to recovery and the voice of recovery to educate the public about the value of living in recovery. And is that why you are here today?
Yeah.
All right. So that's good. We got a lot of education to do. Does anyone need Spanish translation? We do have the type today. If you do, we can give it to you. We came prepared. We also came prepared to do ASL. So please let us know. All right, okay, good enough, just in case. And Hannah nicely reminded me. So that's really important. And today, we wanted to go through different policies. One, how many of you know that the state legislators are doing their budget for 2025? And in it are some like things that we might care about, such as transportation, low threshold housing, workforce development. Are those all good things? So this is an opportunity to reinforce it. And we're going to have Senator Vilas come and speak with us today, which is a great thing. And he's got a big job that's called the Mental Health Substance Use and Recovery Chair. And he also represents the Hampden County area. And then we're also going to hear from the state. You see Deidre Calvert, who's the Bureau of Substance Addiction Services, that helps to manage and direct the funding that comes into really good projects, right? Yes. And you're going to hear from our board. We have our president here, and that's Kevin McCarthy. And I see Della Blake, who is a board member, and also with the Black Behavioral Health Network. So another thing that's happening, how many of you know about abatement? And I'm not meaning rebates, I'm meaning abatement. Okay, that, and I think that you know that our good governor, when she was Attorney General, and that's Maura Healey, she really was so touched and affected by how the pharmaceutical companies just got away with spreading something in the form of medication that led to addiction. And then that led to, we got to do something about this. And so they have been sued. And so those funds are coming to the state of Massachusetts and other states. So we're here in Massachusetts, and we're going to learn that 60% of those, if you don't already know, go to this remediation council, and you got to figure out where it's going to go. There's a committee. But I think you all know, and in case you don't know, you're going to learn today, right? That 40% go to the 351 cities and towns. And so we're going to get an opportunity to talk about that. And with that, there's a little clause that means a big deal. And that means that every one of those cities and towns, and they also can get together with other friendly cities and towns, need to have a little committee, which is gonna do big things, because it's made up of people affected by addiction. So do you think you should have a voice in that? Yes, okay, that's really good. So we're gonna have a keynote regarding that. And so that is really a big thing to know. And there's other things going on. The legislative year, in case you didn't know, is going to be ending on July 30th. And there's certain things that are going to be happening, and you might want to know, there's movement in this big bill that came out of the House, and the Senate might do it, and if they do it, it'll become law. And it has licensing for recovery coaching and 51A reform. Do you think there should be some reforms with 51A with the child welfare DCF? Got some issues here, we're gonna talk about those. So yes, and that's really important, along with making some pharmaceutical changes, prescription monitoring, and all of that good stuff. So we'll be talking about that, and you will be walking away with an action plan, and that action plan will be, what is it that where is your voice? What do you care about? And we will support you with that, and that's important. So before, I also want to thank the committee that really helped to make this forward. We had representation from Hope for Holyoke and Valor, as well as Rural Recovery, Recover Project, and then WMSAPA, and did I miss anybody? And we also have Living in Recovery too, and those are all the recovery centers in the area, and their voices will be heard. Yes. Okay, so before I go any further, I'm going to introduce the president of Moore, Kevin McCarthy, who's going to introduce Nico. And also, let's start it off with a couple of stories of people that are in recovery today, and really would like to say as to what's going to happen for this future. Is that good? That's good. So Kevin.
Thank you, Mary Ann. I'm not in Major League Baseball. I didn't think I had any coming out music, right? Hey, we gotta work on that. We're gonna do that. I got a song for you anyway. I'm just here to say on behalf of the board, thank you all for showing up. And I was talking to Dallas a minute ago, and he was talking about where he's at in his life. And you know, my name's Kevin McCarthy. I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means to me, since November 5th, 1994, I haven't found it necessary to use a substance in order to get through my day. But I'm here today because, you know, it's like I said to him, 95% is showing up. If you keep showing up, you keep being in the spaces, you keep speaking your truth, right? Eventually you get heard and things start to change. That's what Moore's been about for the last 30 years. All right, representing people that want to show up, get their voices heard in order to make change for people in recovery. And whenever I come to these things, all I want to say is thank you. You know, since I moved to Western Mass, one of my favorite sayings is, there is no us without you. You know, and it's you all showing up that make the difference. It's your voice that makes the difference that's heard in Boston. You know, I just want to say that, you know, since I moved out to Western Mass, I'm finally starting to feel at home here. I'm looking to buy in Springfield. You know, I'm planning on settling, and this is going to be my home. And I just appreciate everybody in this room because you are me. You know, and I want to say thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing up for more. All right, because it's what you do that makes a difference statewide. It's your input that fuels the change that we are all looking for. And so I'm just here to participate with you, and I look forward to doing what Nico does so well, because I'm going to call him up next, and that's walk shoulder to shoulder with you as we move forward in changing ourselves into recovery communities, recovery aware, recovery-informed, recovery-infused communities, right? We're not alone. We're not a minority that sits over. I refuse to be the person that's over there anymore. I'm standing here. You need to take care of me the way you take care of everybody else. Okay, I will be heard and I will speak till I am heard. And the person that is the voice of Western Mass, I want to call him up. You all know him.
Alright, Good morning, everybody. My name is Nico Alicea, person of long-term recovery. Soy boricua de Springfield, Massachusetts, para recuperación para toda la gente que están aquí. Thank you all for being here. One of the most beautifulest things that I got to find out when I stepped into recovery is that I did matter, right? That I had the opportunity. I no longer was the outcast, that I was somebody who was important. And in my soul, I didn't feel that, but people like you and people in the world helped me feel that I was somebody and that we're someone, right? And then I went to school, Sandra Munier, I went to take a late night class with, Hanan. And then I really got to see that, what can I do in the community? And the other thing was, a friend of mine, and I know he did this to get a little bit of extra money, because when you refer somebody, you get a little extra kick, right? But he's like, Nico, come here, man. I'm like, what is it? I'm going to class. He said, yo, I need you to go home tonight and put an application, right? And I did that. All right, we also needed a better job. We were really good at that time, but I signed up to be a recovery, right? And what I asked was a recovery. He's like, bro, it's the same thing you do every day, man. You help people out, you inspire them, you're dropping people off where they need to go, and you get paid for it. I'm like, bet, sign me up. But what that did is it allowed me to be there to help others, right? And be there to listen to people. That's one thing. One thing when somebody helps, but do they listen to you? Do they understand you? And in my journey of, I give shout outs to Hope for Holyoke, because when I was down, they were great. My friend Billy Gagnon was no longer with us. My best friend gave me a chance when some people just didn't, and I appreciate it. One of the most beautifulest thing is two speakers that we have coming up are individuals that I have met in my recovery journey. Right? They inspire, they make me laugh. I bust them upside the head with stuff because that's what we do, right? We just keep things flowing in a happy way. My first speaker that I have coming up was this lovely gentleman from Hope for Holyoke. And one thing I can respect about this brother is this. He gives great hugs. Right? Yes. Right? And then during the damn Hopi Awards, you know what this guy did? Wore the baddest looking suit, man. He looked like an FBI, CIA agent. You know what I mean? He looked dope. This Boricua band is, I love him. Orlando's coming up right now to speak. Welcome up, Orlando.
I would have chose Wu-Tang, but that's what how you doing? Good. Wow, Wednesday, right? Wow. How you doing, guys? How's everybody? It's Orlando. I am a father in recovery. So, yeah, I haven't done this in a long time, but yeah, so I'm a father in recovery. I'm gonna try to keep it real simple and my little journey. So I'm a single father, and I wound up that way because I wound up with a little daughter. Mother was in addiction. And I was in that what you call benign addiction. I don't only smoke, I only drink, and that stuff. And I wound up being a single parent. I had to let go of my job. There's someone here with me 7 years ago. She remembered when I first got my children. In Pampers. And Cause nothing's gonna fall on me, right? Like, I only got mass help, you know that, right? I also wanna thank more, before I even get into my story, I gotta thank more for having me here and everything that you guys are doing and having, bringing us all together to make, better choices, man, and change things. And so, yeah, I want to be the same parent, and, it's funny, because my plus one happens to be the person that was with me when we first got my kids. Both of them in diapers, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had to stop drinking, I had to stop my usual go to work, come home, big. And it was overwhelming, and we wound up, Rachel, we wound up in a shelter. From the shelter, we wound up in COVID. And then COVID came. And he wiped over the planet and just had us stuck, and we were stuck in the shelter for 4 years. I lived in every shelter there was in Holy. I lived on Sergeant, I lived on Oak, I lived on Dwight, I lived across the street from the mayor. Okay, and it was just insane, and eventually my story wound up where DCF took my children. The way they took my children, it was very unfair to me. They immediately, look, I was like 70 pounds bigger than this. I feel like they judged me in a sense, you know what I mean? They couldn't believe that a man is raising 2 children. I potty trained my daughter. I potty trained my son. And it took 2 years for reunification. So if anything needs to change, it's definitely reunification. But in that journey, I remember I used to walk, in Holyoke, I walked 3 extra blocks to avoid the activity that goes on in my neighborhood, just to get to my kid's school. So I would walk the 3 extra blocks, and one of the safest blocks is next to the natural gas and electric and the post office. Nobody's there hustling no bags, right? So lo and behold, there's Hope for Holyoke on 100 Suffolk Street. And I remember walking past and saying, "Oh, my daughter likes purple. I like purple too." I kept walking by, be like, "No, I got this. My life is under control. I got this. Don't worry. Daddy only drinks on the weekends. When you're sleeping, you're right." And I wound up having a huge trial. Like I said, DCF took me, and I wound up on my knees, having to surrender because I was not going to give up on my kids out there. So, and Hope for Holyoke at the time was being ran by Debbie. God bless her. And Debbie and a whole team opened the doors for me and gave me hope. So I changed, and I was like, "Yes, I'm gonna do this. I got this." And I was like, "I'm gonna get my kids back in 6 months." We always make plans. Y'all already know the story, right? So, and I thought I was gonna have it, and then in 6 months, on New Year's, I get a phone call. The mother of my children was found in a garage. And she had an overdose from the fentanyl that's out here on the street. And I went down to a sack of rocks again. Now Debbie had moved on, and now it was Ray. And I had to come to a place for hope again. Hope requires patience. To have patience is humility. There's so much hope there. We're like a family there. Like somebody goes through something, we all go through it. We still look for each other, like we worry about you if you don't show up. It's not a regular center like you think. And I hit a ton of rocks again, and I came back up again, and I had to put myself in detox twice. And Hope for Holyoke helped me do that. And I'm very grateful for it. And now, after 2 years later, on the 29th of this month, my children return home. Very long journey. And there's a lot of things that I wish I could talk about. Oh, I'm pressing buttons here. But I do want to share the time. But I wanted to share this idea, right? You said to share an idea. What would we do with some money? And I have a big one, but this little one. The big one is the license. What I called it again? Wait a minute. I wrote it down right here. Hold on.
License for recovery coaching, is that it?
No,
Oh.
the license renewal loan, the
Well,
second
no,
chance
oh.
license renewal loan, because if there's one thing in recovery I learned, Everybody has a problem with their driver's license. And then they want you to pay 10,000 all in one shot. How about you make it just like you do a mortgage, just like you do something you pay back? Give the pardon and they can pay portion as much as they make, just the way, same way you do housing, do it with a driver's license. And maybe some deadbeats will get off the couch, let go their PlayStations, let go the bonds, and they'll go do something. And then maybe a father could take his child somewhere rather than the child looking at the drug dealer driving down the street with the nice rims and you know, like, it could make a difference, this part. Like, it would be like an amazing thing for women and men, not just fathers. I advocate always for fathers because I am a single father, but for fathers, just imagine if you could do that. You know what I mean? Like, you could save a lot of headache of people locked up for child support and let them go actually do something. Why would you take away two from the man that's gonna provide for the child? I know I'm not advocating for deadbeats, please do not misunderstand what I'm saying, but that was one of my great ideas. The other one is, Hope for Holyoke has a program called Highway to Hope, my bad. And I'm not just saying it because I'm from there or trying to glorify my center, it's not about me, it's about us, right? But that Highway to Hope van every day takes at least 2 to 3 to 5 people a day to a recovery center, to a detox, to a mental health, wherever they need to go. And sometimes we get them 4 or 5 times within a 3 months period. But they get there. If every center had that, just imagine how many people we would be giving harm reduction to, right? Because I believe we're in the business about change. Before I end, the other thing I wanted to share was something that we've been learning at Hope for Holyoke, right? The windshield in life is bigger than the rearview mirror. And that windshield has windshield wipers. So behind this positive quote, me and my team, what we was doing a New Attitude group, my brother Marco, and we all came together and we collaborated and we created a recovery cover. So the windshield wipers is your sponsor and your meetings. Your windshield fluid is your prayer, your meditation, your high power, whoever that is to you. You know what I mean? Your brakes is your boundaries. Your locks is to keep out the nonsense from people. Your childproof locks to keep in the people you love, right? The sunroof is your gratitude when you look up and you get to see that if you have a sunroof in your recovery, right? What you're listening to, what you're putting in your mind, the radio, you know, the lights on the front is giving you vision to where you're going. The brakes, and don't get me started about insurance on recovery. What do you got? Do you got old state standards? Or do you got, we know a thing or two? What kind of insurance do you have on your recovery? This is gonna get deeper than that, but if y'all wanna come to the New Attitude group, you have to find out the next. All right. Thank you, DJ. We'll get to DJ here. That's in the back of the bus. Thank you. Recovery journeys. Another beautiful brother met along the way. So again, like I said, I went for the LADAC and I became a coach. I worked at BHN for 6.5 years. When we first started there was 6 coaches. By the time that I moved on to go to work with more, we had about 27 coaches. So, you know, 27 coaches, 375 recoveries, not kinds, recoveries. You know, a wonderful, diverse group of coaches with lived experience who cared about what was happening out there, but was also impacted and tired of what was happening in their neighborhoods, right? What changes could happen. And that was the beautiful thing I found about recovery coaching. And another beautiful thing about recovery coaching is the people that I met. Right? After I had left, this brother came in with a new way of thinking, very fresh, out of the box, person of long-term recovery and survivor of life. He is now the director of recovery coaching, my brother Manny Gonzalez. All right, bye. All right.
All right, having a party, right? Hi. Thank you for having me. So as you're gonna notice throughout my talk, I have an accent. I'm a native New Yorker. Can't hide it. It's gonna be with me forever. Right? No matter where I go, it's gonna stay with me. So I've been out in Western Mass or Massachusetts for a year and a half. I came over here because of what's happening in Western Mass. Right, so I'm gonna share my story. It's kind of hard. I usually don't share my story with everybody. There's a few people in the room that know me. So my addiction led me to do 20 years in prison. 20 straight years in a state prison. That's where my addiction led me. Right? I was raised inside a wall in cages. I gave up. I didn't care. I had a life bid. If anybody knows what a life bid is, that means I had no hope at all of survival or to return back. All because I made a decision that lasted only 3 seconds and that cost me 20 years of my life. What did I do with those 20 years? Right? Did I let myself wither? Did I just gave up and just said, you know, F it, I'm just gonna do this, no. So I'm gonna fast forward because I definitely don't have a lot of time and I know I'm long-winded. So for the 20 years that I was there, I gained 2 college degrees. Right? I gained. My first degree is in mathematics, computer science, right? And I switched over and ended up getting a degree in public health as a biostatistician, right? Kind of weird, right? It's kind of mixed up. And I also have a half partial family law degree from Yale. That's what I did with my 20 years. I didn't give up. I ran groups inside every day in the evening for 2 hours, 7 days a week. For all those years I was in prison, I was running groups, self-help groups. How do you make yourself, don't let the time do you, but how do you do the time, right? How can you survive this, right? So I went in front of the parole board, New York State Parole Board, if you don't know, it's one of the hardest parole boards ever to sit in front of. And they released me my first time around. They took my life bid, commuted it, and released me. Now I'm released into a community. Now I'm released into a community that I had no damn idea about. I did not know what a cell phone was. Right. And I don't know what Google was. Right? It was one of the most greatest things in my hand, but it became an addiction once I decided to indulge into it, right? But I went to tons of different recovery centers. This is the Hudson Valley in New York, if anybody knows where the Hudson Valley is at. You know, there's tons of recovery centers, all kinds of centers, and everybody closed their doors. Well, nobody tried help, because not only was I suffering from an addiction, I was also a release fellow. And no one wanted to give me the opportunity. And trust me that I fought and I fought and I didn't give up. And at that time, I became violent interrupter. I don't know if anybody knows what a violent interrupter was, and I'm also an instructor for it, and I was helping curb the gun violence down in New York City. That was one of the first things that I started doing. Right. And then I met a judge. Judge decided to say, hey, I'm running a drug court, veterans court, and opioid court. Would you like to be a peer? I said, hey, why not? Said, hey, you're gonna let a felon into the courthouse and give me the keys and the fob. I was like, okay, all in. I'm all in. Let's do it. My office is right next to his. I used to use this coffee all the damn time. Right? But it was because of he understood what addiction is. He believed. Right? And because of the people that believe and open up, giving them the opportunities and the things to come in, I started doing that for a few years. Until I found myself moving over to BHN, right? And them hiring me as a program director was a huge feat for me. All the barriers and the things that I came across, and I met a lot of beautiful people that are in this room along my journey since I've been here. And I'm proud to be part of this team. Right. But one of the main things that I know Nico, Marianne wanted me to talk about was the safe consumption sites. And how necessary it is for us to have them here in Western Mass. Now, I have worked at a few sites, and let me tell you, it's not easy. It's a lot of moving parts. But for me, it's to say, it's getting the community involved first. Because once the community can believe, and the municipalities can believe that a site like this can work, and what the three prongs are, and we know what the three prongs are, right? It can curb infections. It can lower needles being all over the streets, bags of fentanyl. You know, when I seen a dog overdose and a dog being Narcan because it ate a bag of fentanyl that was in the park was huge, right? We even seeing our first responders, right? Searching people, picking up and also overdosing. That really just changed my heart and really say, hey, you know, when Nico talked about it, I say, hey, Western Mass can use that, right? Because again, it would curve all the needles that we see around. It would lessen it, right? It would cut down a lot on diseases, on HIV, AIDS, but also the criminal justice system, right? We'll start seeing the recidivism rate drop with people with addiction. Because now they have a place to go to, they have a safe place to go to. They have people that care, they'll have medical staff, recovery coaches, they'll have the people that they need to wrap themselves around, right? When we know not everybody believes in harm reduction, right? We'll have business owners, homeowners, hey, I don't want a bunch of addicts across the street using, right? It's getting them to believe that it works, that it would help, that it would curb all the issues that we're seeing in our communities and the structural violence that's already occurring every day that we see. Right, so please, when that stuff passes, I'm a supporter, and I know everybody in this room is a supporter for it. But it's definitely something that I do believe in, and something that we do need. It's not a one agency thing, it's a family agency thing. We all need to be part of that fight, take a piece of that pie, so we can be able to serve the community a good meal.
Humanity, and thank you, Orlando. You are visible, vocal, and valuable. With that, and we have with us today, someone that I knew before that worked with families, and I modeled at her, and then she became the director of Hope for Holyoke and Inspired Hope, and now she's working for the state, being the BSAS Recovery Support Services Coordinator, and she's really helpful. She helped so much in setting this meeting today. So I want to introduce Debbie in a big way.
Hello, Western Mass, my people. My name is Debbie Gonzalez. I am all of those things Mary Ann said, right? And the regional coordinator for the Recovery Support Services in the West and Central Mass and the Northeast. But for people who know me, you know what I always say, the West is the. Yes, don't tell the other regions I said that. But more importantly, I am a woman in long-term recovery. Born and raised in Springfield, working in the Holyoke, Chicopee, Springfield area, raised my children here, helping to raise my grandchildren now. And what we do here in the West is really special. The Massachusetts is above and beyond everywhere in the country when it comes to recovery, peer recovery especially, which is what I live and breathe. But here in the West, we've been doing a lot of great things. And guess what? East of here, they're noticing this now, right? This is really true. Proof in point, we have 39 peer recovery support centers funded by BSAS now. This last fiscal year, the new funding, we are adding 10. 3 of them were added in Western Mass alone. Those gender recovery barren centers out there in locations where there was nothing. Now we have 3 in the Berkshires, in South County, in, oh gosh, now I'm like, Pittsfield, no, South County, North Adams and Pittsfield, we got 3, right? That's pretty fantastic. And then we've got one in Ware. That was one of the newer ones too. So we're from Ware up in Hampshire County up there. It's amazing what we're doing. In addition to recovery coaches everywhere in the courts, in the hospital emergency departments. We have so many great things happening here. The transportation programs, as Orlando mentioned, and more to come on those, we hope. So the West knows how to do it. We know how to do it right. And I'm just so proud to be a member of the Western Mass recovery community, as you all are, and I see so many familiar faces. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce someone who's really been a champion for Western Mass and for all of the services we have within the BSAS system, and that is our leader, Ms. Deidre Calvert, who is the director of the exactly.
I will.
I don't know if I earned Bruce Springsteen to play me on, but thank you so much, Debbie. That was such a, where'd you go? There you are. Thank you, Debbie, so much. That was a wonderful introduction, so thank you. And I am Deirdre Calvert, and I'm the director of BSAS, and I'm also a person in long-term recovery. I'm really grateful that, and I'm also really tall, so I'm just gonna put this up. I'm really grateful to be in Western Mass, but of course, if Mary Ann asks me to do anything, I just say yes. I say what time and where, and what time do I have to leave my house to get here? So other than that, I'm really grateful to be here. So I'm gonna talk about 2 things and then introduce some colleagues of mine that Mary Ann alluded to. One is the opiate remediation plan, which is the 60% of the abatement funds through the pharmaceutical lawsuits. That's the state portion. And then we have the 40%, which goes to the municipalities, which I'm gonna introduce my, like I said, my colleagues. So I'm gonna do that, but first I wanna talk about the opiate remediation. The ORF has done a community grant initiative, and it is an equity-focused project, which is one of the advisory council's strategic priorities. And this initiative was selected by the ORF last year and intended to create accessible pathways for community-based organizations and municipalities to apply for ORF funds. So we're trying to make it very accessible. So this is particularly for serving communities that have experienced disproportionate rates of opioid overdoses. So we released the RFR in December, looking for an experienced vendor to design and implement a community and data-driven grant program. This enhances grantees' capacity to address or mitigate the harms caused by the opioid epidemic. And it incorporates the voices of those who've been most affected by the opioid crisis. So it was extremely important to BSAS that those with lived and living experience be included in the review process. BSAS created, yes, thank you. The funds need to be, we need to increase and have people with lived and living experience, not just those in recovery, but those who are continuing to use drugs. Right. And those family members. So the first training was held in December of 2023. Somebody's phone is ringing up here, by the way. I don't know whose phone it is. Well, Marion's getting a call. So the first training was held in December of 2023 for the Community Grant Making Initiative and was attended by the BSAS Community Advisory Boards, which we have several. As a result, we were able to form 2 peer review teams who participated and were compensated for their time. And I want to point that out, that we should not be asking people, especially people with lived and living experience, to participate in anything and not compensating them for their time. You would not expect a doctor, scientist, epidemiologist, social worker, anybody else to participate in something without compensating their time. And people with this experience are just as valuable, and we are paying them at a rate that is comparable and actually over sometimes what others are getting paid. So that's really important. So ultimately, BSAS and that team chose RISE Massachusetts to administer the Community Grant Making Initiative. And RISE was chosen on account of being the only public-private partnership in Massachusetts that's solely dedicated to funding solutions to end the overdose crisis. It has a successful track record of building networks, creating programming, and supporting community partners using novel approaches to preventing overdose. So in partnership with BSAS, RISE developed the Mosaic Opioid Recovery Partnership, which incorporates community-driven and culturally appropriate processes that are intended to reach individuals and families most affected by the opioid epidemic. So RISE announced these community-based, yes, thank you, we love RISE. So RISE announced community-based opioid response core, so community opioid response efforts on May 15th for the first of 3 rounds of funding. So the first round, the first applications, I believe, closed a couple of Fridays ago, maybe last Friday. And that goes through the Mosaic program. So the core is intended to help organizations deepen their impact and bring the work to scale and to build strong infrastructure to meet the needs of the populations that they serve. These grants provide general operating support to strengthen and build organizational capacity, therefore increasing the sustainability within community-based organizations. These 3-year grants range from $50,000 to $150,000 annually, depending on the size and the budget of the organization. Then we will announce, RISE will plan to announce the next round of grants in the fall, which will match the municipal grants. So each municipality, based on a formula, got a certain amount of money, which we'll hear more about later. And so municipalities can apply to increase that too. So we're very excited about the Mosaic program, and we're fortunate to have an innovative thought partner like RISE. So that's one part. So now we're going to move over to CARE Massachusetts, which is the municipality work. So at the local level, BSAS worked closely with JSI, who was contracted by BSAS to develop and implement a training and technical assistance program for municipal opioid abatement. This resulted in CARE Massachusetts, the Opioid Abatement Partnership, which was launched a little less than a year ago. The state-sponsored TTAs, we call it Technical and Training Assistance provider. Their goal is to help municipalities build the capacity to effectively oversee opioid abatement activities at the local level. As you can imagine, many of these municipalities don't know how to spend it, what's the right way to spend it, what they should be spending it on. And of course, one of the, we can't say requirements, but we are strongly support the lived and living experience on those boards making those decisions. So CARE Mass is tasked with providing access to the tools and resources that municipalities need to uphold the requirements in the state subdivision agreement. If you haven't seen it, go on mass.gov. It's about 6-7 pages of appropriate uses for the money. So it's not to give it to the police. It's not to fix potholes. It's not to balance a budget. It's not to do any of those things. There are requirements. So in March, we hosted a municipal opioid abatement conference, which is a 2-day virtual event, and that was attended by 169 municipalities from across the Commonwealth. This event provided an opportunity for municipalities to share about the barriers they face relative to the overseeing this work. So what are the barriers? So we are hoping to hopefully mitigate those. This insight, as well as feedback from others we received throughout the past year, has led us to conclude that we need to take a more proactive approach in this TTA process. That includes tailored TTA services per municipality. So CARE Mass will be announcing its plans in months ahead, so stay tuned for that. But with that being said, I'm really grateful to introduce the folks who are going to talk about CARE Massachusetts, which is Carly Britton and Kate Lena. So without further ado, Carly and Kate, come on up.
Thank you. And hello. Are we gonna have the slides up or? Where is Hannah?
I'm not as tall. Hi, I'm Carly. Just while we are getting the slides up, I can just do a kind of quick intro to what we're gonna talk about. Dee actually did a pretty nice setup for us, so we can probably go pretty quickly through those slides. But again, my name is Carly Britton. I'm part of the CARE Massachusetts Opioid Abatement Partnership TA team. I actually work at Boston Medical Center, but I am part of the JSI team. And this is my colleague Kate, and I'm going to start us off, and then she'll kind of go through the second half of the presentation. So we've started to assign TA providers regionally. So I was lucky enough to get the Western Mass. So if you all have any needs, you can reach out directly to me or to the general line. So just the objectives of our talk today are to introduce CARE Massachusetts, present a summary of the opioid settlement and abatement priorities, at a really high level. Review the requirements, and recommendations for towns and cities as part of the settlement process, and share tips on how to involve people with lived and living experience in the municipal abatement activities. And I know a lot of you are from the community, but we also are hoping that we're speaking to municipal leaders, folks in the towns and cities, and kind of coming at this together and how you can work together on this process. So I won't go into great detail since Dee set it up, but just to remind folks that we are here to provide resources and training and technical assistance for municipalities, and so that they can really be most successful in spending their abatement funds, and to help them guide through, kind of help you understand the abatement terms and what strategies may be most impactful for your town, and kind of go through the process. We can, we really like having these one-on-one conversations. A lot of times we'll get an email, somebody just wants a quick answer to a question, and 99.9% of the time we say, let's pick up the phone, let's talk, let me understand your question, because there's so much context behind what they're asking. And so always, we pretty much always have a conversation before we make any recommendations. You probably all know this, so it'll be very high level and brief, but just to kind of set the context of why we're here. Back in July 2021, then Attorney General Maura Healey announced that the state was going to participate in a national resolution, $26 billion nationwide, with the opioid distributors and manufacturers. Over time, there have been more companies and pharmacies being involved in this. So that really the goal of this litigation was to resolve claims that these companies engaged in misconduct that enabled and perpetuated vast increases in opioid overdispensing and diversion. So things like unfair, deceptive sales tactics, failed to monitor suspicious orders, and avoided the professional responsibility. So that's why we're here today. And over $900 million is coming into Massachusetts. As Dee mentioned, 60% of the funds that come in will be managed through state initiatives, and 40% is going directly to towns and municipalities. And that really is the focus of CARE Massachusetts, helping the towns and municipalities. And just to point out that this is for prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery. And there is a fairly long-term period of time, like 18 years. So the towns and cities that wanted to take part in this litigation signed on to what we call the Massachusetts Abatement Terms. So this is a document that was agreed to in order to receive these funds. So really, this is what we use in our TA conversations to guide, recommendations. And it's really about supplementing and strengthening resources available to Massachusetts communities, so the people that are actually in the state and their families, for substance use disorder prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery. I just want to kind of keep reiterating this, because sometimes folks can kind of have broader ideas or kind of go off on tangents, but really this is a really nice guide to focus the work and to really get to the communities, the folks that have been impacted the most, that need the support. So in the terms, there's some language about, encouragement, or, there are a few requirements, not too many. It's mostly, a guiding document, and there's some leeway in the direction that towns can go, but really you need to use evidence-based services, or things that are promising, things that have kind of been done and show that they can be impactful. You definitely don't want to do something that has been shown to not be impactful, or that can actually produce harm. So kind of do your research on that, or talk to us about those things. Pull your funding, either regionally is great, or just, maybe a couple of towns nearby, especially the smaller towns, in places that, people don't just live and stay and, get things in their own town. So if you work together, you can impact your community members by working with your neighbors, because they're crossing all the borders. And I know the state over the past few years has set up some really great systems with the public health excellence grants and the inter-municipal agreement. So we encourage you to look at any groups that you're already part of, and we can help you. CARE Mass, it's not just sort of the public health TA that we provide through me and Kate, but we have the Massachusetts Associated Boards of Health, Cheryl Sabaro and some folks from the team are there. So they're great with a lot of the contract questions or the municipal finance questions and things like that, we can help with as well. And so focus on specific unmet needs. These funds are, while there is a direction that you need to use them, they are quite flexible. They're not gonna come with a lot of the same, restrictions that federal funding might have. And then use the resources that are available. So you may or may not know that the BSAS has some great data on their website and a new dashboard where you can like pin down exactly your town. And then obviously, Care Massachusetts. So some things that that are required in the terms is really like centering lived and living experience, centering equity, not supplanting the fund. So this isn't like, oh, we were paying for this, every year through our town budget, but now we can use these funds. Like, that's not what these are supposed to be for. For communities that are spending $35,000 or that receive $35,000 or more, or they're pooling together, you need to submit an annual report. And then you need to focus on the 7 strategies, which I'll just quickly put up here. I won't go into all of these in detail, but just to kind of mention that these are things focused on improving people's lives, either people that are using drugs, people that are in recovery or trying to use less or trying to be safer, family members that have been impacted, and prevention as well. So this is not about supporting things that you really you want to think about supporting the people that have been impacted, either people using drugs in recovery or their family members. Sorry, my way. So this slide just, it's hard to see or hard to look at because it represents so many of our friends and neighbors and family members. But just to point out that in Western Massachusetts, you guys have been hit really hard, and some towns more than others. But you can look at the websites and get your own town's data. And just to point, one of the reasons that we wanted to share this slide is to show like why we're here and like what got us here is those companies that were misleading everyone. And these are a lot of people that, maybe we can think about ways that we could have prevented their deaths, or maybe these are, hundreds of families that have lost children, lost parents, like how can we support those folks? And really just to kind of think about what it looks like in your town. And then this is another slide that is historically, the opiate overdose impact was predominantly among white populations, but over the years, recently, those groups, you can see on the left, the white and non-Hispanic has kind of been flat, even like reducing a little bit, but our friends and family members in sort of Hispanic or Black and even American Indian, they, over the past 5 years, those rates have really, really increased. So thinking about that in your town would be really important. Looking at that, looking at those groups that may be small in number, but are, still really need to be focused on. Okay, so I'm gonna hand it over to my colleague Kate now, who's gonna talk about involving community members in this process.
All right, good morning, everyone. Everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So you're gonna hear some repeat thoughts, but we know that we as humans need to hear things at least 7 times before it really sticks.
That's
And we want
That's me.
municipalities to really hear and know and understand that people with living experience need to be a part of this process. So we're gonna keep saying that until it happens in as many towns and cities as possible. So why involve community members? One, it directly speaks to the purpose of these settlements to abate the harms caused by the overprescribing of opioids and deceptive sales tactics. Involving people who are using drugs from the beginning of this process and throughout will set the stage for their meaningful and thoughtful involvement the entire lifetime of these funds. So starting from the very beginning, that sets that groundwork. People who are using drugs and people in recovery, people receiving treatment have been directly affected by the opioid epidemic and are at highest risk of experiencing a fatal overdose or witnessing one. Recognize that people with lived and living experience often have years of experience as community organizers and policy research, direct services spaces, informal mutual aid. People with lived and living experience have hard skills that can be leveraged and utilized in this space and should be. And then ensuring that people most affected by the opioid overdose epidemic have an active role will actually maximize the impact of your work. You want to make sure that the way you're spending the funds, you're being effective with them. So having the people who are receiving the services involved throughout the whole process will make sure that you're actually doing what the community needs. How to do that though? So when we're talking to towns and cities, a lot of times folks, we're like, well, yeah, I understand, I need to do that, I want to do that. I just don't know where to start. And it's a good question. So contact organizations led by people who use drugs, other advocacy groups, substance use coalitions, service providers, peer recovery support centers, many of whom are represented here in this room today, syringe services programs. These organizations are working directly with people that should be a part of the process. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a municipal person who's doing the talking to, community members. Most of the time, maybe it shouldn't be me who's out there leading a focus group. It should be folks who have the training and understand the language to use, because if you use the wrong word once, people may just shut down. So look at who has the experience in your town or city and work with those folks. Recognize the disproportionate impact on people of color in your community and connect with organizations led by and serving people of color. Make sure that you incorporate cultural humility and understanding, opportunities to provide input in multiple languages, because you saw that slide on the data, and it's when we talk about, a decrease statewide, we can celebrate that, we should celebrate that. And we need to look deeper into the data and see what's underneath, who are we missing? What populations are not being positively impacted by the services that we're providing? Offer ongoing meaningful opportunities for engagement. So this shouldn't just be a one-time thing. And it shouldn't be a one-time thing that then what you collected, what you heard just sits on a shelf. So you hear from folks, offer ongoing, genuine opportunities to be a part of it. Take that information you heard and actually incorporate it into your plan. So don't forget about it. Don't do it just to check off a box. And this is all information that you all as community members can share with your municipalities as well. And then follow up to report back on how the feedback was incorporated, or maybe it wasn't, into funding decisions and why those decisions were made. So make sure that, when someone shows up to your community forum, they understand, all right, this is where my feedback is going. I know that it's being incorporated somewhere. This is valuable time that I'm giving. This is valuable, headspace that I'm giving. It may take a lot for me to get here, and I'm seeing that my voice is actually going somewhere. And if it's not, you need to tell folks why not. Validate experience and emphasize the importance of the voices of people with lived and living experience. Use different types of engagement events and tools. So interviews, surveys, community forums, in-person or virtual opportunities. Make sure there's an anonymous feedback tool. Remember that we all are different people. We all learn differently. We all communicate differently. If you're in a really tiny town, you may not want to stand up in a room and raise your hand and say, here's my experience, here's my opinion. So maybe for a smaller town, having an email option or an anonymous QR code that you can scan and then submit something. You've heard this already, but we're going to keep repeating it. Pay people for their time. Pay people for their time. Pay people for their time. It's really important. But it is not something that I think has been emphasized or recognized. So we do need to keep saying it. We know that cash, Visa gift cards are the best thing. I'm here right now to the capacity of my job, and I'm getting paid in a paycheck. I'm not getting paid in a Stop and Shop gift card. If your municipality cannot figure out how to pay people in cash or Visa gift cards, ask your community members, how would you like to be paid? What would be helpful for you? Gas cards could be really useful. But don't assume anything, ask folks how they want to be paid. And you can always partner with a community organization if it's easier to process those payments through a recovery support center or a syringe service program rather than the municipality. And many municipalities assume that this 30B law is something that can get in the way of paying community members. It applies to the procurement of supplies or services for a governmental body in the amount of $10,000 or more. So this is a municipal finance law. It's not my area of expertise. These slides will come out to all of you. You've got links, contact information if you have specific questions about it. The stipends to community members, most of the time, unfortunately, are going to be under $10,000 to participate in an interview or community forum. So this law does not apply to this. Paying community members, this is an exemption. So this is not a reason to not pay folks. Sorry, I know we're behind. Who in your community to involve? Should involve everyone, but most specifically involve people who are still actively using substances. Local community organizations can help figure out different strategies to have all these folks be a part of this. People who identify as in recovery, people who are receiving addiction treatment, family members, and people working in direct service at harm reduction, recovery, treatment, and prevention programs. And then a couple tips for smaller, more rural towns before we transition into the panel section of the event. We know that many really tiny towns in Western Mass may have a half-time public health agent or a director. There may not be paid staff that are working on this. So by involving community members, creating those coalitions, you're actually creating capacity within your department without spending any town money. And you're checking off lots of boxes. You've got the people that you need to be a part of it. And you've got your team that is going to help you work on this. Regionalize, partner with neighboring towns, partner with those community organizations providing the direct services. Recognize that not everyone in even, Eastern State Massachusetts has access to consistent, fast internet. There are a lot of really rural pockets in Western Mass and the rest of the state offering low-tech options for people to get their voices heard. So surveys in paper, as well as online, providing opportunities for anonymous and private confidential participation. And then recognizing that it's okay to have a short-term plan and a long-term plan. You don't need to do everything in year one. Year one doesn't need to look the same as year 5. And it shouldn't, because our community members' needs are changing year to year. So create that short-term plan. What can we do today? Long-term plan for, year 18 of these funds, because it is a really long-term amount of funding. And then just lastly, when you do get these slides, for all the municipalities that are in the room today or on Zoom, and I'm skipping through the question period because I want to make sure we have time for the panel to speak. There's lots of resources in here, just so folks know. That's it. You've got our contact information. Are we leaving time for questions now, or
We'll have questions later.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Right.
Thank you. Another round of water. And I'm going to be introducing someone that some of you may know pretty well, but before I do, because the state legislature, we did have, and there may be some from the room today that are from the offices of Senator Joe Comerford, Representative Lindsay Sabadoza, Representative Carlos Gonzalez, Senator Senator Adam Gomez, and Representative Brian Ash had indicated interest that they would be here. They could be online, and their staff members might be here. So I just want to say, oh, they are. Hi. How do you do? Thank you. And also Zeta Govan, who's a a member of the community, and she's a newly elected city councilor from Springfield, so that's great. Yes.
Yeah, I'm from the office of the Attorney General in Fraser.
Oh, wow. It's wonderful that you're here, so this is great. So you have a very famous person here, they're all famous. We have someone who is the Mental Health, Substance Use and Recovery Chair from the Senate side, and he has a big job. And he's here today because no time he wants to listen to. And so Senator John Velas would you come forward. Got a little background music. Very good. Wow.
We go by, everybody get the council, come on and ride to the, make us all out the board
So I want to give you a insight into my psyche for a second. Should all be nervous, right? So he gets called up here and they're playing Springsteen, right? The previous speakers come up to that song that I forget, the one they always play at the weddings. I forget what it's called. And then that for me, so anyway. There you go, that's all right, that's at every wedding and every club, everything. So the past 15 minutes, I've been saying, like, what are they gonna play for? So consider what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, because that's my psyche. First, what an honor to be here. You folks do phenomenal work. I am humbled to be here around so many people who are, without exception, leaders in this industry. And I think it's really, really important that you continue to have these events, right? Because this is how people like myself, that are in a position to really, really impact things positively, also negatively, right? Like a lot of times we talk about the positive, but sometimes we forget about the unintended consequences. So I want to talk about a few things and then, yeah, I want to talk about a few things. And I'm gonna push the legislative stuff aside for a second. I just kind of want to give you some of my own observations, right? And, you know, the numbers that are out there, right? Cautious optimism might be a way I would describe it, but I can't stress, I can't overemphasize enough the cautious word there. And, you know, there are times when I see these numbers and then I get the call, right, that another buddy has just lost their lives. And there's times I say to myself, these numbers showing positive trends, if you will, are fake news. You know, I'm talking about fake news. Sometimes I say that's fake news. And unfortunately, this past weekend was one of those weekends for me, where another buddy's brother died of an overdose. And I have to tell you something, from the bottom of my heart, I am so very sick and tired and sad of me going to one of my own recovery meetings and seeing someone who's been there, who's been a mainstay, who's been a fixture at these meetings, no longer there. And you ask somebody, you know, where is such and such? And you get those words, he or she died. So anybody that thinks that this isn't so very, very real, doesn't think that we're at war with this thing, is truly living on a different planet. So everybody's approach to recovery is different. Everybody's recovery is different that works for them. I've made it pretty clear what's worked for me. But I am one of billions of people in recovery. And again, I can't stress that enough, that what's the best recovery, whatever works for the individual question. I think it's really important to say that over and over again. And here's why. And I know several folks have heard me talk about this before, but I'm gonna talk about it every single time that I have an opportunity. Because I think one of the biggest challenges people in this room face collectively is the stigma within the recovery community. So I got, and as I think most, I am a man who, just yesterday, I had a conversation at a meeting for my recovery, my path, where a bunch of my buddies who I was out running and gunning with, we kind of looked at each other and said, you're out there right now, we forget about it. It would be, we may last a week and a half without an overdose, maybe. It's so dangerous out there, stuff is so contaminated out there, but here's why it's important. Because I have been at those meetings that have saved my life, where I've talked to other people, and I've heard them say some of the legislative stuff that we're gonna talk about. That stuff is crazy, that's not true recovery. Anybody who needs a medication, that's not recovery. Overdose prevention centers, you kidding me? Kidding me? That's rewarding bad behavior. Then I've been on the other side of it, where I've talked to people with more PhDs than anything in this world, and they'll tell you that 12-step stuff, that's voodoo science. What's the best recovery? Whatever works for the person in question. It's been echoed 100 times, but I'm gonna say it again. Lived and living experience. I don't care what you do, but if you're not listening to folks with lived and living experience, you are wrong, period. And I'm gonna give my just very brief perspective of why I think that's very bad. That's very bad. Why I think that's really, really important. And I can, again, I want to be very clear here. I can only give you, I've got two voices here, right? A person in recovery, but also a lawmaker. And I'm gonna give you my former right now about why I think that lived and living is important. I remember, so I've got about 7 years now, 7 years plus. And about 9 years ago, I had that look from my mom and my dad, right? Blessed with having them in my life. And my dad was like, John, you gotta go see a shrink. You gotta talk to someone. You're drinking, your drug is out of control. And I got that look, and now that I'm the dad, I have a 2-year-old son named Carson, and now I look at him. And I got that look from my dad that I hopefully never have to look at my son Carson. And it was the look of a dad knowing that he was on the verge of losing his son. And that look is seared into my mind. It will be to the day that I perish this earth. But anyway, so I go to this shrink. And by the way, I just refer to anybody who like talks to people as a shrink. I know there's many different psychiatrists, psychologists, and I have the utmost respect for the profession. That's just how I euphemistically refer to them. I'm talking to the shrink, and I'm giving them my thoughts, and I'm telling them a little bit about my habits. And I can see in his face, and he certainly didn't say this, but I could see in his face, he was thinking, dude, you are certifiably sane, crazy, and I can't even believe you just admitted what you just admitted about how you go out when you get after it. And I felt that way, right? But when I talk to someone with lived and living experience, they look at me and they kind of chuckle and say, kidding me? Let me tell you about my story. Let me tell you about my experience. And it's disarming. It's disarming. Wow. I thought I was so unique. And I still have this problem. Look at my, ruminating about the song that was gonna play when I get called up. So I thought I was the only person in the world. And then of course, I'm not, right? So really, really important. I tell people to this day, I tell my colleagues, no disrespect to all of you, but the best advice, the best counsel I get in this space is when I go to one of my own meetings. I just love, it's so very, 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 very important. Another hack. So I know that we tend to focus on opiates. Really, really important. But I've got really, really big concerns. Stimulants, benzos, so many other substances. So I would just say that as we're having these dialogues, there are folks right now, as we speak, in the throes of an addiction that could also include opiates. But in many respects, is outside that, but in most instances, polysubstances, right? So just being mindful of that, there's different things that are out there. I always do this, I can't read my own writing, it's a problem that I constantly, I literally can't read my own writing. So now I'm gonna venture into the, kind of where we are, and then I'll expedite this a little bit. So as you may or may not know, the House of Representatives, I am a senator, the House of Representatives recently passed what we're referring to as an SUD bill, a substance use disorder bill. A lot of good stuff, in it. Where we are procedurally is that in the next few weeks, you will see us in the Senate do our own version of that. Yours truly is in the process of drafting it. One of the important things about this type of stuff, and I would strongly encourage anyone who wants to weigh in to reach out to me now. Like this is pen to paper as we speak. And we're gonna go back and forth with our friends in the House on this thing called a conference committee that I have way too much respect for everybody in this room to try to explain or get into the intricacies and the absurdity in many instances of conference committees.
Try.
What's that?
I said try. I'm only kidding.
Try to start to stay on a positive. The recovery coaches, what I can tell you is that recovery coaches, for many reasons, already articulated that shared lived experience, living experience. I can't say enough positive things about recovery coaches, so I will give you a sneak peek and let you know the House did it, we will as well. There needs to, speaking of getting folks paid, right, we need to somehow or other come up with a licensing scheme so we can help these people out. Anybody heard of these things called safe consumption sites or overdose prevention centers? I have been tasked with reaching out to all of my colleagues. I was asked very clearly by the Senate President to reach out to my all colleagues and kind of, we call it whipping the members, right? It's getting out there. What is your position? Where are you? And the information that I love the people in this room, so I'm gonna give you, you have folks that fall in the yes, absolutely category. You have people that fall in the no, absolutely category. And then you have the overwhelming remainder that fall in the yes, but details matter category. And I think that's really, really important to remember, because what we're trying to do is get at what those details look like. And that's the world I'm living in right now. Knowing that our friends in the House did not include them. So not only do we have to do it, we would also have to negotiate on that, which again is the political space that I'm going to try to avoid. Back to the lived experience then, and then I'm gonna stop talking. Another thing that, for the very same reason that my guard was dropped when I first told my story to somebody in the somebody also in recovery, we also need to do a much better job. We've got a workforce, we've got profound workforce challenges right now. But we also need to do a much better job diversifying the workforce, right? Because when someone raises their hand and says that, those, in my opinion, the three hardest words, but also the three most courageous words for any human being to say, I need help. We need to make sure that there is someone there that can help them. do a better job making sure that there are in many instances, people that look like the folks that are asking for help, because if there's something that potentially could make them say, you wanna know what? This person doesn't get it. We need to reduce that. We need to reduce that, but it's an imperfect science, because we just don't have enough in this industry at all, period, end of story. I think I'm gonna leave it at that, other than to say, I'm really, really grateful. I'm really, really grateful for any number of reasons. One, I'm grateful to be alive, and I'm also grateful that I look out here and I see that, you know, however many years we are into this addiction crisis, there's folks from all walks of life. There's folks from all races, genders, socioeconomic status, who have been impacted this and are saying, I want to do something about this. And that gives me a reason for just to be happy. Like, to know that there's people, when I leave here and go start the day, there's people that are so invested in this fight that, God forbid, if this is something that I'm dealing with my little guy. I know there's a lot of people who care a lot about just doing what I think this is all about, saving fellow human beings' lives. And that's really, really important. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. I should have had rock. I should have had rock.
That was fabulous. Thank you for speaking from the heart, Senator Vilas, in a big, big way. And let's also give a big thank you to Kevin Legends. He's got the music and the beat to go on in a big, big way. I also wanted to mention, as we talk about recovery coaching, a good thing that's happened in our state is the Recovery Education Collaborative.
Yeah.
That is geared towards supporting the recovery coaches in a positive way, to give them the education that they need, and is out there trying to find out what it is that you need. And then I also look across the room and I see Paul Alves doing the work that he does with Joyce. And then also, you know, Ms. Blake over here, which she does with the LACE, the Latino Alcohol and Counselor Education, Addiction Counselor Education Program. Is that right? Oh, Blake, base,
Well,
black alcohol. Hernandez, near as the other.
yeah, but there's a new director in the building now for the Black Addiction Counseling Education Program, Willie Taylor. I don't know.
All good things, as we talk about building the workforce development in a very, very big way. And a lovely lady who is a recovery coach and works for Hope for Holyoke. We heard the gentleman before, but why don't we hear from this woman who has turned things around, and she's got a few requests to make, and that's the lovely Sarah Colby.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Colby, and first and foremost, I'm a woman and mother in recovery. Yeah. I would like to share a poem, and it's from author unknown. It says, I am enough. I am enough to make it through the night. I am enough to make it through the day. No matter my struggles, and I have many struggles, I know I'll be okay. I don't give in. I believe and have faith. I am enough. You are enough to make it through anything. You are enough to live, excuse me, through anything. You don't have to be perfect. And it doesn't matter if you are smart, just open your eyes and open your heart. Find the strength and peace that we have inside our chest. Believe that it will stay there until your very last breath. You are enough. You are enough to make it through the nights, the highs, and make it through the lows. You are enough to make it through the dark sky and the night where the tears fly. Don't give up. I promise you it gets better and our dreams come true. We are enough. I am enough to make it through drugs,
heartbreak and pain, I'm enough to make it. Through the cold and pouring rain, I am enough to make it. Through anything with you, my friend, I am enough to make it, because this is the only beginning, it is not the end. Like I said before, I am a mother and woman in recovery. I am in recovery for substances. And my road was not pretty at all. I finally did all my I will nevers. I achieved them, and I kind of thought that was a cool gift and the goal. Hey, I did all the things I said I would never do. But it was, I'm trying to be honest here. It was actually a blessing, all the things that I endured and encountered and witnessed while I was active. It became instilled in my brain on how to become a better helper. And I did the I will nevers so I can reach to populations that nobody wants to reach to. And in my recklessness and poor mothering skills, the sick and suffering version of Sarah was unfortunately introduced to DCF. And immediately upon DCF being called, they instantly filed the 51A because of my past substance use history. They did not come talk to me yet. They did not do a urine screen yet. And I instantly was red flagged as a drug addict mother, and they didn't let me talk at all. If they would have, yeah, I was all that stuff, right? I was a bad mom. I was getting high in front of my kids, but they didn't know that yet. So they instantly just looked, see my name, and put up a case without any information. Then when they found out that I was receiving medicated assisted recovery, that threw another red flag up. And they looked differently on you. I had to go to my counselor at my center and my clinic, and I went there and I felt safe. I could talk to these counselors. They understood that I was there to better my life. Methadone saved my life. Yeah. And as soon as I went in and I was honest, I felt judged even then, because I had to sign releases. Oh, DCF's asking for your drug screen. Which ones do you want them to see? And when you go into a treatment, it's acceptable to have a dirty urine the first time you go. But they use that against me as well to prove something. That's when I was introduced to Hope for Holyoke, a recovery center which saved my life. When I indeed beat my DCF case and it closed for good, I was a member in the recovery center, and I knew that that's where my higher power wanted me. And I did everything in my power to stay there, be visible, vocal, and heard. And through my determination and hard work, I am now a recovery coach at Hope for Holyoke.
All right.
My job, I found the focus towards the women and mothers in my community and in my center. And I work strongly with the GRSW program with Gandara and Holyoke. And I interact with these women on a daily basis. Some are mothers, pregnant, and they can stay there until their child is born. One of my recoveries just now had a baby. And this baby's so beautiful. The baby had to stay in the hospital for 5 days because it was born on methadone. Instantly, the mom had a 51A called on her, filed against her. She described to me when she had to leave the hospital when her baby was without her baby, that they looked at her differently every time she went into the hospital. She stayed at the hospital every single day. She didn't want to leave her baby there. And that didn't matter. They just seen that she was a drug addict on methadone, and that they thought that it's okay to take these babies away from people. It is my goal now to fight for these women and these little babies. that need their moms. Infants need human contact right away. So if they're taking these children and removing them and keeping them in the hospital without the moms, who's touching them? Who's holding them, who's feeding them? The nurses, not their mothers, and that's not right. As a human, that's not right. Now, here's on my end, right? A recovery coach. I struggled. I was homeless with my children. I did everything, and now, okay, yes, now I'm in recovery and everything's great, and I have this wonderful job. Well, guess what? Life really happens, right? I still can't pay my rent. I'm being honest with you right now. I still cannot pay my rent. I make too much money for food stamps. I make too much money supposedly for welfare. And I live off of $200 every 2 weeks to feed my family after my bills are paid. That is ridiculous. We live every day to work to help at least one other person in our jobs are mentally and physically draining on us. Do you guys agree that, right?
Yeah.
I go home after working my 8-hour shift and I don't even want to cook dinner for my children because I'm so exhausted from my day. And that's the reality, and people don't like talking about it. The reality is, okay, yes, I will have to get a second job. I'm already tired after working 8 hours. I can't work another 8 hours. Then my kids just got their mom back, right? Now I have to hire babysitters to work a second job. So where do my kids get their mom? Right? So there's a turnaround with our recovery coaches and our social workers and people in the field because they're forced to find other jobs that have more wages. And instead of staying where their heart is and where they're needed, they have to go work at factories and manufacturing companies that just pay a little more. And they're not going to work to go to work. They're going to work just to get that paycheck and their hearts aren't fulfilled. Well, I'm here to say that my heart wants to be fulfilled every single day that I go to work. And I would really like to see us deserving, hardworking individuals get paid more. And us to go back to school.
Yes.
Take my student loans away. For good, right? People just need to stand up. And I'm finding my voice lately. And one of my friends and colleagues told me that I just need to be seen. So I'm seen. I'm not gonna stop. It needs to change, and it just takes one person, one voice. I also wanted to kind of take notes. How about Holyoke? Let me just call Holyoke out, please. They don't want our center anywhere in Holyoke. We have been turned down several times when we want to move to a new facility. Why is that? They should want us there. We save lives. We take people off the street and bring them to treatment. We have a center where these street people feel safe. The working girls come and they feel safe for the moment they're there. A cup of coffee can save us life. A cup of coffee can save someone's life. And if they don't want to put us somewhere where we need a bigger space. We've outgrown, we deserve a great center. We got turned down. I want to be vocal on that too. We need your help as a community and colleagues. Please help us and speak up for all of our centers. We don't talk about this. How about use some of that money and pay for funerals for the people who don't have families? Rather than be called to the Lord as a mainstream neighbor buried in a plot somewhere, they deserve to be recognized in there. They were loved by somebody.
That's right.
And they have voices. And we tend to forget about these people. They're just street people. They're this, no, they're humans. They have names. And we treat them like garbage, and that's not okay. They're humans at the end of the day as well. So I just ask, I guess, please open your voice. This takes a lot for me to do, and since I can come up here and speak, and anyone can, and it just starts with us, and it starts with me. Again, my name is Sarah Colby, and I'm a woman and mother in recovery. Together we are enough, together I am enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah Colvin. You are amazing. And I do want to give a clarification. The new director, the new director for the Latino Addiction Counselor Education Program is Sandra Mooney. And Hannah Hernandez is now executive director for the IDEA Initiative under New North Citizen Council. So there you go. And we are about, are you all revved up? Because we are gonna have like the greatest panel. And it's gonna be wonderful, and we're gonna do more speaking up. And that is going to be great. So we do have with us, Sarah Ahern, if she would come up. As well as, Gary Pratt. Caleb McAndrew is from. And more voices of lived experience will respond. We have Maurice Taylor. Antonio Lozado. And Gary Jordan. And David Lewis, the famous is going to be our facilitator. So come on up, folks, and I go down. And we're gonna just rise up. Very good. Take it away, hey,
Right, good morning. Yeah, we're still in the morning. Good morning.
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 Yeah, well, good morning. It is my pleasure to moderate this portion of this forum. We are, as I introduce the panelists, we have, have to excuse my glasses of fashion. We have Springfield, representing Springfield, the GSOCC with Dr. Frank Robinson.
Frank in there.
You should look next time. For Westfield, Kim Slade, Greenfield, Sarah Ahern. From the Berkshires in South County, Gary Pratt. Northampton, Taylor McAndrew. More lived experience voices, Maurice Taylor, Antonio Rosado, and Gary Porter. And the panel of the dialogue was facilitated by me. All right.
And we can begin with Sarah.
And we can begin with Sarah. Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Ahern. I am first and foremost a woman in recovery. With substance and trauma. I'm also an overdose survivor and a family member loss. I think I'll pause for a minute. Because one of the main reasons why I'm here today, is my family has buried way too many people with overdose. 7 family members, but the ones that hurt the most for me, with my brother Joseph Patinsky, this will be 1 year. And then 1 year and 3 months before Joy passed away, his husband, Aaron Alfonso Robinson, who was a member of the armed services, also passed away from overdose. Also here as a representative of the city of Greenfield, as a member of the Greater Greenfield community, and the steering committee that was formed to approach the opioid abatement funding. I'd like to, give a shout out to a couple folks that are here from Greenfield. First and foremost, the Recover Project in Greenfield, I know is on Zoom. Mayor Ginny DeSorger and her chief of staff are also, zooming in, and Wade Perry, who is a city council from Greenfield, the 7th precinct, is also chiming in, and I'd also like to thank Marion Bullock, who is a city councilor with lived experience, who was my partner in all of this. And the main reasons why we got it right was her and I and the peers in recovery that were part of the process. I also like to give a shout out to Liz Wynot from Tapestry, who is also a wonderful community partner. But I'm here to represent the city of Greenfield, and also to represent these smaller cities and towns of Franklin County through the Franklin County Regional Government. I want to thank Phoebe Walker for giving me the information that I'm going to be, bringing forward today. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Pratt. I'm the Executive Director of Rural Recovery. We operate the South County Recovery Center in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. It's named the South County Recovery Center because we try to provide support to all 15 towns of South Berkshire County. So if you think anywhere south of the Mass Pike, down at the Connecticut border, that's who we try to reach. It's a pretty large geographic rural area with plenty of problems. I'm also a person in long-term recovery. It's been quite a while since I've used substances chaotically and absolutely destroyed my life. I'm very grateful to be able to not have handled this and to be able to, to help move this movement forward. So yeah, I don't know what else to say because we're just doing introductions right now. We'll get into the nitty gritty later. So that's me. So thanks.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us here. My name is Taylor McAndrew. I am going to be wearing kind of two hats today. One is an employee with the city of Northampton in Hampshire County. But I also am really lucky to work with the Hampshire Hope Coalition, which represents lots of different partners across Hampshire County. And we'll get to share a little bit about the work we did to conduct a survey with some exciting results, but also learning that we still have a lot more work to do to make sure that we are able to intentionally and diligently spend our opioid settlement funds. Thanks.
My name is Maurice Sofati Taylor, spoken word artist, DJ. I've been using my cultural expression to bring attention to social political issues in the communities for over 30 years. It's an honor to be here to represent voices that go unheard. I was a foster child, adoption, which is what fueled my addiction, which is actually what fueled my mother's addiction. And we're talking about why the opioid addiction or crisis and addiction, we need to talk about how foster care fuels addiction as well. When we talk about reparations, we need to talk about how many families have been broken and destroyed due to foster care. Not only that, due to how these drug laws have been disproportionately hammered into the Black community. Last thing I want to say is when you're identifying people, I'm not a person of color. The term people of color was created in Haiti, gens de couleur. It meant makes not a slave and wealthy. And so in this country, when we use the term people of color, what they use it to lump us all in. It takes our sovereignty, our individuality, our culture. And many times when I say that, white folks say, well, what do we say then? Well, if I identify you, I'm saying German American, French American, Italian American. Ask us what we are. Identify us individually, because many times that often means that Black people aren't getting the funds that we need. And I say that because I've been doing cultural events in communities for years, alcohol and drug free, with no funds whatsoever. And now that Peer Research Centers are popping up, a lot of funds for cultural events are going there. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to rise up everything you said.
My name is Gary Porter, and just to be clear, I'm not a person with a lived experience in terms of using substances. But I am a person that has been in the community for well over 40 years, working with my family that I see dying on a daily basis. I'm the administrative director of the African Diaspora Mental Health Association. We are the only all-Black owned and operated mental health and substance use clinic in Western Mass. Our approaches are not evidence-based, they're community-based. I suspect that we'll have plenty of questions and conversations, but at the heart of what oppresses Black people in addiction is racism and what we call economic warfare, where the money is being funded and channeled, and it is not being channeled to any agency that looks like ours to do the work. And I think we need to have a very serious look at why that is and how we can change it. Thank you.
The last, best of the last, just kidding. My name is Antonio Cruzado. I work for Battle Recovery Center as a recovery coach. And I'm so grateful. I'm nervous. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was called by, well, my director Maria Lopez asked me last Friday, I said, Antonio, I need to be in the panel. I said, me? So anyway, then I spoke to Debbie, and then last night I spoke to Marianne, and I asked the question, what do you need from me? Like, you know? But she told me my experience, I just got released, and February is gonna be 2 years that I got released from jail after 18 years incarcerated. She was asking me about the challenges that I have. I've been blessed, I would say, that I have people that support me, you know, through all these difficult times. So I had Lacey Salvador's name. She was one of the strongest supporters, you know. I was doing a second degree. I was working in the field for 8 years. In 2005, I relapsed in drugs under depression, anxiety, all kind of stuff. So I committed a crime. I took a car with the kids inside, and I decided to go to trial, and I was sentenced to life. After 15 years, when I went to the parole board, they gave me 3 years setback. That's when people, reps and senators started being my case, and they said, don't want to release me. Again, with the stigma about addiction. The law would say, you know, if you're under the influence, there's not an excuse for you to commit a crime. So I went to trial, got sentenced, and it's been 2 years in February. I've been blessed. I just graduated last week through, thank you, Sandra Falcon, that you're here. I got my certification for the LADAC, so I'm going to before he coached for classes, because I had that in jail. When I went to jail before, that was never before we coach classes. So it opened the door for me, and I'm so proud that I'm working in the center right now. And I just hoping, you know, my story, you know, encourage and help other people. And like I said, I'm nervous, but if you got any questions, yeah, my addiction most of the time is bring me to jail. But I never give up. Like I said, you know, I'm fighting, and I'm thankful for you guys. It's an honor to be me in front of champions. All you are champions right here today. So I'm happy to be here. If you got any questions, you know, I'm more willing to answer any questions that you have. That's it.
So I forgot to introduce myself. My name is David Lewis Senior. I'm the clinical director at the African Diaspora Mental Health Association, and also the co-chair of the Massachusetts Black Alcohol and Addictions Council. So one of the first questions that I have for the panel is, what is your role with the abatement funds in your community? Go down the line.
My role with the abatement funds in my community, which is the city of Greenfield, is, first and foremost, being, someone with lived and living experience. And through that process of being continuously involved with, two mayors, a couple of different city councilors, because, they have terms that expired. So I intentionally involved myself in those conversations and included my peers. And I was named just recently to the steering committee for the city of Greenfield, as we move through, the second phase of our opiate abatement conversation.
So I don't even know how to explain this, my role in all this, so, let's see, in 2020, our agency, Rural Recovery, was funded by the Health Resources and Services Administration of the federal government. And with that, we had like a 28-page work plan, and part of that was one sentence that said open a safe space for people affected by opioid use disorder, and that meant opening a recovery center. So like for years before that though, in 2015, this group called the South County Opioid Working Group convened, and like through all sorts of different work before I came along in 2017, a whole bunch of people from our community got together and realized that there was some sort of opioid issue going on and what could they do about it. So when I became part of this, there was already a lot of work going on. They had started on a needs assessment for South Berkshire County, and through all of that is how we got that initiative funded. And then over the past 3 years, almost 4 years now, we've been building our recovery center. Thank you to BSAS for funding us for long-term sustainability. It's fantastic to be able to do that. But I also knew that these opioid funds were going to be coming. And our consortium knew they were coming too. So I guess my role in that is as a leader to really, have that voice as a person who's living this stuff. It's has lived experience in long-term recovery, and to also get people from the community involved as well. So it's always been the base of that. So I guess, as a leader in this in South County, as a voice for South County, very, very strongly advocate for South County all the time. Our place is called the South County Recovery Center for a reason. It's a very rural area. It's not well represented. Transportation is awful. And we really need to get people like myself, like my staff here, they have long-term experience too, to really have that voice and to give our experience of what would be best for our community too. Because I can't reiterate this enough. What works in Greenfield won't work in Great Barrington. What works in Great Barrington certainly isn't going to work in Roxbury, so we all need to have that individualized, tailored response. So, having lived in South Berkshire County for a very long time, my entire using history was there. All of my friends still live there. A lot of my friends don't live there anymore because they're not alive anymore, and it's unfortunate. But having that tailored experience and really knowing the community is really what my role is. And then to herd the cats, to get everybody together and to really have that conversation. So, yeah, and we did a lot of more specific things that I'm sure we'll get into it, so.
What is my role? Herding cats is one way of putting it. I was just saying convener or advocate. I am thinking back to when we first heard that there was going to be a TA service from the state and communities didn't know what to do. And Debbie, I got your contact and I was kind of harassing you, and I knew Carly. And so when I heard that Carly was a part of the team, we started reaching out to figure out how we could pull our communities together. And so particularly in Hampshire County, City of Northampton has a lot of resources, and then we have a lot of rural communities who don't have a mayor, but have different local government systems. We had people who were on boards of health that weren't, hello, okay, that weren't, they didn't know how to get in touch with their town administrators or the select boards, or community members who are saying, I'm reading articles, but I don't know how I could get my voice involved. And so really my role has just been pulling people together and utilizing partnerships. And so I also wanted to give a shout out to Trevor from the Northampton Recovery Center, and Peter from Learn to Cope, and Liz from Tapestry, that we were able to, I think, utilize all of these different community resources to then kind of network, pull in more people and create this survey. So convener, advocate, and just to say, I think the other thing I'd add is like, being the person in the room to say like, it's okay to go slow during this planning process to then be able to go fast and have a really solid plan that's built off the voices of people who've lived and living experience, that I think there's urgency to spend money, but just because we have the money doesn't mean we should go out and say, I think this is what should happen, so we're gonna do it, to really be intentional. And that's been hard because people are dying, and so we need to keep doing the work. And also, yeah, be intentional, I guess, is what I'll go back to saying, so.
That's a loaded question for me. 'Cause whenever I ask about what's really being done in Holyoke about the drug epidemic, I don't feel like there's much really being done in Holyoke. There is hope for Holyoke, but if you look at how many addicts are in Holyoke, there's a disparity there, right? The ratio doesn't add up. I live on Elm Street. I live 65 Elm Street, and there's a reason why I said my address, right? It's already dangerous, so it can't get more dangerous. At any given point in time, there's at least 20 addicts shooting up next to my house. Residents are afraid to say anything because they're afraid that people are gonna get back to them, and here's the reason why. They're afraid that the police are gonna write their names in reports. People are gonna get the reports and people are gonna retaliate. When you talk to the police tell you that they're overwhelmed, that they can't do anything, right? When you talk to the mayor, you can't talk to the mayor really. I did have a conversation with one of the mayor's aides. Ain't nothing being done. And that's just sad, right? And I live right by one of the most dangerous areas. And the things that it's gotten easier at night because I finally was able to get the city to put up a no trespassing sign and a sign that tells you what time the park closes. Even that took about a month to get done. To get them to put up to close a fence. Now that's opened back up. They don't really address much. So the best thing that I can do is use my voice. I have a group called Holyoke Hot Topics on Facebook. I took a video of me being in here and I asked, look at the video carefully. Do you see any legislators from Holyoke in this room? Is there any city councilors here? Anybody from the mayor's office? Look around. There are no hands up. And that's a shame because Holyoke is being hit really hard with heroin. That's not the only drug, right? But anyway, there's not much I can do because there's not much being done.
So I think my role is somewhat unique, and it's not just my role, it's also, you know, I do this in partnership with the moderator, David Lewis. You know, we have a real vision for what we call the African community. And that is to really interrupt this cycle of addiction and drugs that we know is occurring right in our neighborhoods. Currently we're trying to develop out a 5,000 square feet facility that we know could do many of the things that have been spoken about today. Prevention, treatment, prevention, treatment, and recovery. So, you know, my role is to make that happen. It's not gonna happen though, if we, number one, don't have, I see Tony here from the DA's office. Shout out to Tony. It's not gonna happen if we don't have people like Tony on board. It's not gonna happen if you just mentioned the mayor. If we don't have people like the mayor on board to take a real interest in our community where this is happening. They do have a very clear interest outside of our neighborhoods, and that is evident. We can see the development occurring economically. We can see the money being funneled to agencies that, you know, I don't mind shouting out. BHN, who constantly gets money. CHD, who constantly gets money. ServiceNet, Gundara. These are people that constantly get money. My role is to ensure that we begin not only to get some of the money, but most of the money. Because the damage is occurring again in our neighborhoods, and we can see the disproportionate effect of that damage. And not only does it happen there, it then spirals to other neighborhoods and cities. So everybody should be vested in our agency and working with our agency. So my role is to collaborate. Now, there's a difference between collaborating and agreeing. And that's what we have too many times. We have people who collaborate, agreeing with each other instead of disagreeing. So my role, I want to collaborate. I want to bring some new insight, some new information from an African-centered perspective, so we can get this work done.
Thank you for everyone to share. My role as a Latino, right? Basically my parent language is Spanish, and I would like to be a role model, you know, to those that get released from jail, and also help to get more services of Spanish speaking people. Right now, the only problem we got is a residential house in Candara. And majority of the client that we have sometimes, they don't speak English. So that's a barrier that I see that I used to get myself before, and my role is, like I said, to see if we can push and open more Spanish speaking programs, and I don't know, be a role model, and to those that get out released from jail. And take the stigma, you know, because you get incarcerated, it doesn't mean you can, you know, get back your life together, and you know, but you also need support and help from other people. So my role is to be a role model for them.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to questions. Do you have any questions for any of the panelists?
Have any of you that have a presence here in Holyoke engaged in a conversation about these opioid abatement monies with the town's governing body? I mean, have you been invited to that conversation?
That's a very good question. The short answer is no, but let me tell you why. When Alex Morris was mayor, I was on, there was this committee that was put together to figure out what to do with the abuse of police abusing citizens in Holyoke. I was on that committee. When the new mayor came in, someone told him that I was in a fight. The issue was never investigated to find out whether it was true or not. I was just kept off other committees. And if you look at the history of Holyoke and Black residents in Holyoke, we're kept out of a lot of things, right? So am I invited into conversations? No. Am I gonna push myself into conversations? I like to say yes, but I'm 51 years old. I've been pushing myself in conversations for years. And here's the things that happens when I do. I have 2 degrees, an associate's degree in computer system engineering, and I have a degree, a liberal studies degree, which was computer information systems. I lost that degree because I was fighting against racism at Westfield State. When a professor told me that I threatened her, it got really hot. I had to leave campus because anybody I went to for support, whether they're white or Black, would not give me any support. So do I fight anymore? No, I learned my lesson.
You want to address some of this?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I live in Holyoke. And so Trevor, and thanks Maurice for sharing your story. I feel like I'm talking off the cuff here. I didn't think about this. I should be doing more in my home community. I have not heard anything from the city. I'm on local Facebook pages. I think neighborhood groups are one of the, most important ways we can be vocal. And I don't know of much going on. And so I have some homework to do. And I'm not 51, so maybe I can do some more local fighting and use my energy. And, no, and really, I'm doing work where I work, and we were talking about because I get paid to do that. I need to be doing more in my home community, not being paid, and I think really elevating this, we wanted to add.
Let me just add real quick. It's not that I'm not doing nothing. I spent years at Hope for Holyoke, right? Using culture as a way of getting people to open up for themselves, right? To see the power within themselves, to be able to communicate with other people, right? I've learned a long time ago, there's one thing that we're missing. We do a lot of things, we spend money this, money on that, but we don't invest in the soul. And that's why I do with culture. I've done many open mics, I've done many workshops, I've taught people how to do video production so that we can tell our own story, whether we're Black or whether we're addicts, so on and so forth. People at Hope for Holyoke will tell you that, right? I've done that on my own dime without getting paid at all for years. So that's how I've been doing the work without any support from a city council or the mayor. Many times when you're an addict and you live in Holyoke, we have to do the work ourselves, right? So that's the work that's being done. The grassroots work is what's being done. And hopefully something like this will either fire the city council and then the mayor's office and say, hey, we don't want stories like this getting out in the public anymore. And so in order for that not to happen, we need to listen to the community. The other thing is that there's a part of this that's being left out is the drug dealers. Most of them are small-time drug dealers. Why are they dealing drugs? Well, why is this the most lucrative occupation that they can find, right? So we need to address that.
Thank you. That question was posed for Holyoke.
Yeah, I want to address Springfield. So let me address Springfield.
And he's actually right, because when you look at it, right, many residents leave Holyoke, go to Springfield, or leave Springfield and go to Holyoke.
So, and I appreciate the question for Holyoke. So what I can tell you is twofold. Firstly, again, Dave and I have reached out tirelessly to the mayor's office, requesting a conversation about this very issue. And Dave, have you received a response yet?
No.
Okay. And neither have I.
And I just checked my email.
And I mean, this has been an effort that we've been attempting to do for some time. But the second part of that is these professionals, these elected officials should be, and somebody alluded to that earlier, should be reaching out to us.
That's right.
And again, they fail to do so. So it really informs us about their thinking and what they care about and what they don't care about, because they are reaching out to other agencies. And, you know, you brought up a very important point, the gun violence. You know, so doing things from an African-centered perspective, Dave and I coined the phrase belly politics, right? Belly politics. These so-called people shooting guns, as male adaptive as their behavior is, they're trying to achieve something. And that is, they're trying to feed their families. And guns have a nexus to drugs, right? And drugs have a nexus to addiction. So again, if we want to solve this issue, we have solutions that are not evidence-based, they're community-based. And for all of, if there's clinicians in the room that are familiar with the APA, right, the American Psychological Association, in 2018 or 19, they came out and made it very clear everything that they have done from an evidence-based perspective has done nothing but to keep Black people in the same position that they're in now. So they've made that acknowledgement. So we need to move away from evidence-based. And the last thing I'm going to say is, there will be no change with municipalities and cities until the leaders address their own implicit bias, because that is what's driving where the money is going.
When you look at the violence and you look at the rising of drugs and so on and so forth, right? We need to also look at the music industry. Much of my work has been, with Poetic Recovery, is to give voice to Black people so we can take back our cultural narrative. When you look at TV, when young Black folks look at TV, they think that these artists are getting millions of dollars to encourage violence, to encourage objectifying women in our communities. And what it does is it creates a constant cycle of demoralization. And we all know, if anybody knows anything about our history, the demoralization of the Irish people, the demoralization of the Jewish people, the Polish people, and America and throughout the world. Well, what led to that? The destruction of their communities, people not caring what's happening to them. And that's exactly what's happening to Black communities in 2024. When many people constantly see these images, they look at me and say, so what? They look at other Black folks around us and say, so what? Because it becomes an implicit bias. So the work that I've been done is working to change those messages, to give voice to those who have different messages, right? Who talks about just life and just living and getting clean and, you know, going to school, so on and so forth. But you all don't fund us for that, right? I don't get calls from you all to say, hey, we have $500 to $1,000. Can you come bring artists? I don't have $5,000, but you guys will call other people and bring money in and even play music that even goes against your own mission statements. So let's change that.
So we appreciate it. Thank you. Your question and then question in the back. And we're gonna try to tailor it down. That's a nice way of saying, keep it short. But we're in time constraint.
I'll keep it short. So Lee Davis from Great Barrington. First of all, shout out to South Recovery Center. You guys are awesome. We have a population of 7,000, so we're a very, very rural town. Thank you to Gary Pratt for telling me, get your butt over here and listen. I'm a single mom. I have a child that is struggling with substance use issues, and my father's Black, my mom's white. I've been in your shoes, but I'm not in your shoes, but I am here to listen. My question really is to, from a point of a select board member in Great Barrington, what can we do to help with the opioid settlement funds? Like, when do we expect them to come, and what can we do from that perspective? And also just one point out, the better that we do in rural Mass, that's kind of working against us in a way, because then people say, there is no crisis. So, one thing with South Recovery Center, they're doing such a great job. And then we talk about what's really happening, and they're saying, oh, I don't see people in the street. I don't see people using. And as a housing advocate, the same kind of thing. If they don't see people homeless, they turn their back and say, we don't have a homeless issue. Well, they're in the tents, they're in the cars, they're in the woods. So in rural Mass, we have a problem with if it's not visible, it's not happening. So I want to kind of talk about that, but specifically I was asking about the opioid settlement funds. When do we expect, and from a person on the select board, what can we do to help make sure it gets to the communities that need it the most? Thank you.
Great question. And I'll try to answer succinctly. I wear one hat, and that is as a representative of Franklin County Regional Council of Governments. Okay, so that represents the 26 towns in western Franklin County that are rural. And they have the same legislative body as you do, town selectmen. The money is already here. There's been a couple of disbursements of the funds, and what the western Franklin County approach was to because it's a different funding bucket. It's like a public health equity, which is a little different than what the cities are, kind of pushing forward. And what I appreciated what the FERCOG did was she intentionally reached out to people in recovery first, right? How do I do this? What are some things, the ways that we connect with people in recovery? How can we find them? Because in West County, there is no peer recovery center. Greenfield, the Recovery Project is, our peer recovery center for the whole county. And it was just continuously involving people in recovery. You have to, whatever your legislative, process is, it's putting those funds where they belong, like during an annual town meeting. What we did in Greenfield, which I'll share with you, which is super important, is we had a city councilor with lived experience. What she did, and I still get a little teary eyed because I was bawling after this vote. She attached an amendment to the financial order for the money. And the amendment stated mandatory community engagement. And then they discussed maybe what that would look like, right, to be determined. I'm watching on Zoom as a person with lived experience. I watched every single city councilor vote in the affirmative and said, yes, this money is for them, right? So that represents 20 years of people in recovery being part of the community and building the recovery-oriented system of care. It's connecting with the people with lived and living experience, right? Don't forget about the people who use drugs. Don't forget the people who are sheltered. What we did in Greenfield was we created a paper survey. We had the QR code, we had different spots in the city where you could pick them, but for the rural folks, they picked spots that grocery stores, right, regular places where people go, you can do it anonymously. And the paper copy we gave to people doing direct street outreach with the folks that are unsheltered, so their voices were heard. And also we held listening sessions in our peer recovery center. So that's sort of like how the engagement process can look like. And having folks like yourself on the town selectmen is super important because you could be our voice in that process and making sure that the settlement funds go to the people directly impacted. And I'll pass it off to you because you're yourself. Yeah.
Thanks. So as far as I know, Great Barrington's a done deal. We're just waiting for the check. So what we did in South County is we reached out to our local boards of health and we got them on board. And then, they fully endorsed here all regional language. Rural Recovery Resources respectfully request that settlement funds be appropriated to the South County Recovery Center for Substance Use Disorder Prevention, Harm Reduction, Treatment, and Recovery, which meets the requirement of the settlement funds. And then we linked it, the requirements. And we went to all 14 towns that signed on to this in South County and went to all of the town meetings. We went to all the select boards and we got unanimous approval from all of them. So we are those people that pool these resources because, for those 14 towns that signed on, I know there's been a couple more settlements, but I know it's $781,000 over that 18-year period. For all of those towns, $781,000. That's abysmal. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculously low amount of money. I'm gonna shout out Alfred, Massachusetts. They get $146 a year. $146. That's their share of the opioid settlement funds. So we pooled it. We pooled it. And I'm very grateful to you, Lee. I'm very grateful to the select board of Great Barrington because it's been fantastic support for us. There has not been one iota of kickback. And I was thinking about my role too, is my role, I'm the executive director of rural recovery. 3 years ago, rural recovery didn't exist. They're creating a new agency in South Berkshire County that is laser focused on South County and incorporating people that don't look like me to come in and tell us what they need and how we can provide that kind of support. So, the grand big picture of it all, why we asked for these opioid settlement funds is prior to getting BSAS funding, we didn't know if we were gonna be able to keep the recovery center open. So divide that $781,000 by 18, it's about $40,000 a year. That would cover our occupancy and utilities. That's what we went for. And I'm very grateful to, say that we got that, but it was a big effort between a whole lot of people, especially the local boards of health, who signed on and said, these people with the living experience are the experts here. They know what's best for the community. And to put it in the hands of the select board, we have very good allies on a lot of our select boards, but a lot of them, we just handed them the fact sheet. We asked them, for this money and they were like, okay, we don't know what to do with it anyway, so go ahead, right? And they were very forthright that they didn't know what to do. And we're uniquely positioned in South County in creating a new agency that we are the boots on the ground. We are the people in front, on the front lines that have lived this thing and know what's best for our community. So, I'm very much in agreement with you, there's particular agencies that this just funnels to, right? But it takes people like us up here who are right there facing it, that know what's best for our community. And, the other thing that we did too, when we went to the select boards, because we knew this had to go to town meeting, we highly emphasized the restrictions of this funding. It's not for fire trucks, it's not for potholes, it's for people who are directly affected by the opioid crisis. So, there's lots of things that can happen.
Awesome.
No, I just wanted to add that the Western Franklin County Council also pulled for funding.
So is real quick, and then, can those funds still be accessing the funds that you're talking about? Okay, so there's not like a deadline?
No, there's no deadline. Those funds are there until we spend them.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. Mr. Nail.
For the opportunity, we know the saying that it takes a village to raise a child, but if the village doesn't raise the child, then the child will burn the village down just to keep itself warm. So I was one of those that was coming up with a book of matches in my pocket. But I appreciate great women like Della Blake, who back in her day, the York Street days, I got my little degree from there. She stood in the gap, and she stood in the gap even up until this very day, where I'm able to have the opportunity to move our workforce initiative forward, but I wouldn't have the credentials, the credentials to qualify for this position that Della held. Della, wave your hand if you don't mind. I will honor her wherever I go, because she's a great lady and I will honor her. But I wouldn't have had my credentials if it hadn't been for the African Diaspora Counseling Agency, Reverend David Lewis and Gary Porter. Because when all of the other big boys shut the door on my opportunity to get an internship, and that's critical. That internship is critical when it comes to obtaining that master's degree to be credentialed. The African diaspora, they were there for me. And so they opened the door and allowed me to do my internship and allowed me to get some work experience. And so, I appreciate those opportunities because you can come into the room. You can drive a car, but if you don't have the license to operate, then you're gonna get pulled over. So I appreciate the great resources that we have in our community, like Della Blake and Frank Robinson. Frank, raise your hand, Frank.
That's not good way.
And I just want to just share that with you. And it's just an honor and a blessing to be able to work with my colleague Sandra Manuel, which we work together at the drop-in center on the north end, and it's just we're excited about the work going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get time for some more questions.
Are we at that time?
Oh, yeah.
It's past that time. We can do our important conversation, important question, and let's give a round of applause for our experts on the panel. Dynamic.
Excuse me. Hello? Hello? So I'm going to share a poem with you guys real quick. Can you all